Recently, we dropped a short pattern arsenal guide where we break down what bowling balls you should bring when bowling on a short sport pattern. Well, today we're going to flip that a little bit. We're going to be focusing on a long pattern. We're going to focus on what kind of bowling balls you should bring if you're ready to go to a tournament and they are putting out a long oil pattern. So stay tuned. All right, so let's first classify what a long oil pattern is. Now, in the general scheme of things, a long oil pattern is around 44 feet long and longer. So anything around 43, 42, 41, we count that as a medium pattern. And then, like I said in the short pattern video, anything 40 and under is going to be a short pattern. So we're only focusing on 44 feet and over. Now, these oil patterns can be vastly different. They're going to be some house shots you guys bowl on that are considered long oil patterns where there might be 44, 45 feet. We have seen that before. We're going to focus on sport patterns. So a oil ratio of 5-to-1 or 3-to-1 and less, it's going to be much harder. So we're going to focus on just a general bowling alley, putting out a general, just stereotypical long oil pattern. Now, the fun thing with long oil patterns is that usually they have a little less oil than a short oil pattern, which is kind of interesting. So the volume of oil that's put out for a long pattern is usually a little more spread out than for a short oil pattern. So you can get a ball to hook a little bit earlier, so you don't need the strongest of the strong balls the entire block to be able to be fine. Now, you sometimes do, depending on how much volume is put out, but you usually don't need something that insanely strong. But with that, let's get right into it with what ball number one should be. Now, as I say all of that, ball number one is going to be a stronger, smoother, asymmetrical bowling ball. This is going to be what's generally in our strong and smooth category. So you're going to see things here like the new Jackal Onyx from Motive. You're going to see things like the Ion Max from Storm. You're going to see things like the Max Bias. You're going to see the Black Widow 3.0. You're going to see those stronger asymmetrical bowling balls that are going to be able to dig early, because the main thing with a long oil pattern is you need your ball to hook. You need your ball to not be fading away from the pocket when it actually hits the head pin, because if you're doing that, you're not going to carry. You need something to get traction and to actually make its move a little bit and get into that roll phase so that you can actually bump up that carry percentage. That is one of the toughest things with long patterns, is finding hook. On any kind of sport pattern, your number one goal should be knowing where the hook is, and finding it on a long pattern is a necessity. Jumping over to ball number two, this is one that I personally like to bring. Now, this is an in-between ball. This doesn't really fit one of our categories. This is between our strong smooth and our strong sharp. I generally like to bring something in this slot that's like a physics blackout, like an Attention Star S2. You're going to have those bowling balls that really don't fit as a strong, solid asymmetrical or really a cleaner asymmetrical pearl ball. This is going to be something that's still going to get traction, be longer than the first ball out of your bag, have a little more angle, but still be able to hook early enough. It's one of those in-between pieces, because on a long pattern, like I mentioned, your goal is hook. And you don't want to get into game one and realizing, oh man, I have no ball that's actually hooking or actually has the right ball motion down lane. Because some of those strong asyms that I mentioned, if you get too strong or too smooth, you generally cannot get it through the pins, because on a long oil pattern, you usually need to play a little bit farther left. Playing up the gutter doesn't work the best on many long oil patterns, unless you're on a USBC Masters pattern, for example, where they forced you to play on the gutter. But on a lot of them, you're playing 15 to 18 at the arrows, a break point of around 9 to 10. So some stronger, smoother bowling balls don't like that much angle and won't actually be good. So that's where this in-between slot really comes in clutch. Now, the third slot I like to recommend is the strong and sharp category. This is going to be a cleaner pearl bowling ball that you can go to when there's a friction spot that starts up. It's still going to be a ball that has enough teeth and a big enough core and cover to be able to hook if there's oil, but it's going to be a lot sharper. So things in this slot are going to be things like the Intense Mindset from Brunswick, or the Vaporize, or on the Storm side, the Attention Star or the Virtual Energy Blackout, DNA Coil. Over on the Motive side, you have the Crimson Jackal, or you have the Nuclear Forge, or the new Raptor Rush. So this is going to be a bowling ball that you switch to either right after your in-between or your strong smooth ball, If you need something to get a little further down lane and be a little sharper when you have to start inching your way further left on the lane as a righty and then right as a lefty. Or this is something you actually can start with. A lot of rev dominant bowlers start with asymmetrical pearl bowling balls. So they usually start with those because they can still get an asymmetrical pearled pickup early enough and still drive through the pins, but that gives them a little bit of extra kick down lane to make it feel like more of a house shot and make it feel a little bit easier. So if you're rev dominant, you might be able to really lean on this strong and sharp bowling ball. Now going into ball number 4, this is where I really like to put a medium smooth or something between the medium smooth and medium sharp slots. So this is going to be a bowling ball that you either, again, can start with if there's a little more friction than you expected and those strong and smooth balls are hooking way too early and being way too smooth. So this can be a symmetrical bowling ball that you go off of it, where it's still going to be smooth down lane. You can still keep that tighter angle, but it's still going to be able to get friction early because it has so much surface on it. So balls in this slot are going to be things like the Phase 2, like the old Pride Dynasty from Motive. You're going to have things like a Game Breaker 5 or a Hazmat Solid. There's going to be a lot of bowling balls that fit in this category. This is typically the quote unquote benchmark category. For longer patterns, it isn't really a benchmark. You want that benchmark to be one of the stronger bowling balls in your bag. This one's really going to be a transition piece. My personal favorite is a Phase 2. For a personal note on it, the Phase 2 is my go-to on long patterns a lot of the time, whether it be game 1, if I'm in a bowling center where there's a lot of friction on the lanes, or games 3, 4, 5, if my strong ball is now already hooking a little too early, leaving too many 10 pins, just hitting a little too flat, I go over to a Phase 2, I move a little bit more into the oil, and then it looks amazing. Next up, we're going to go to the ball number 5, which is going to be a medium and sharp bowling ball. This is going to be just like it is in our regular 6-ball arsenal guides. It's going to be a ball you go to right after your medium smooth ball. Still has a pretty big core on it. It's probably symmetrical though, and it's going to pair well both off of your strong and sharp ball and your medium and smooth ball. So things in this slot as of today are going to be Optimum Idol Pearl. You're going to have the Primal Rage Evolution. You're going to have things like the Scorpion Strike. You're going to have a lot of great balls from every company. These are going to be your a little more skid snap, but you still want them to pick up early because with long oil patterns, you always need that break point close to the pocket. And all you do is you just continuously move deeper and deeper onto the lane, but use that same break point. So you need bowling balls that are going to be able to cover that angle down lane. So that is where this medium sharp ball is really going to come in handy. In my opinion, this ball usually only comes out by about game 6, 7, 8, depending on how long your block is or what your match play format is. It's usually later in the day / the last ball you use. This is ball number 5 because personally, I don't think there are many situations that you want a ball that has a weaker cover or core than this medium and sharp bowling ball. This is usually the last ball you go to for the tournament because you still need that stronger core cover to cover that angle down lane. And the final ball in this 6-ball arsenal is going to be a wild card. So by wild card, I need this ball to be specific to what your game is. If you're someone who's more rev dominant, I would then recommend having 2 medium and sharp bowling balls, or you add in a slightly weaker and sharp bowling ball. I wouldn't go down to something like an IQ2 or Ruby. There aren't many long patterns that you need a ball that weak. So going a little bit more into detail on that is on a long pattern, you don't want small cores. You don't want small cores with small covers because weak core, weak cover combos from that deep, they just aren't going to be able to turn the corner and be able to be sharp enough down lane or pick up traction in the oil that's still on the lane. So in general, most people stick with that medium category, rev dominant, balance, or speed dominant. But if you're rev dominant, you can sneak into that weak category just to have something weak enough, just in case the lanes are absolutely torched by the end of the day. If you're a speed dominant bowler, on the other hand, I would recommend having one more ball in that strong smooth to strong sharp category, something a little bit stronger, maybe in between a couple of balls. Like if you have an Ion Max and you have an Attention Star, I would recommend something like a Physics Blackout or an Attention Star S2, something that really goes in between because you really are going to need something on the top of the bag to make sure that your ball hooks. Speed dominant bowlers, long patterns are usually harder for you because you usually have a hard time getting a ball to hook. And when the pattern's longer, it really emphasizes getting a ball to hook and you have a tougher time doing it. So speed dominant bowlers, I'd make this wild card something a little bit stronger. Rev dominant bowlers, I'd make it something a little bit weaker. Now, to end it, let's address the elephant in the room, and that is urethane. Should you bring urethane to a long oil pattern? And really, that one I need to leave up to you. There are a couple of long oil patterns that urethane could work, but usually on long patterns, they usually block out the right side of the lane. Usually playing up the gutter doesn't work. It's usually fairly flat out there on a longer sport shot. Again, barring the USBC Masters pattern from 2024 or 2023, I believe, where you could play up the gutter. But in general, urethane might not be the best play. If you're a two-hander or a no-thumb bowler or highly rev dominant and urethane looks awesome on everything, then I would recommend making your wild card a urethane bowling ball because you might be able to stick with that. You might have something that others don't. But for 98% of the population, urethane is a no-go on a long oil pattern. Now, I know that was a lot of information to throw at you and a lot of bowling lingo and mumbo jumbo. So please let me know if you have any questions on anything I talked about down below in the comments. I am more than happy to help answering some questions. If you want to keep it a little more private, then DM me on Instagram or TikTok, and I'll be able to answer any questions you guys have. I'm going to keep this Sport Shot series going a little bit longer, going into more patterns, maybe going into more of the details that I talked about, because bowling on a sport pattern is virtually a different game than bowling on a house pattern. They are night and day different. You have to attack them in different ways. So I'm going to be continuing this series. Let me know what else you'd like to see on a Sport Shot series down below in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day. I will see you on the next one.